I'm continuing my look back at the Kasparov-Anand World Championship match held in New York, 1995. Kasparov had won game 13 very quickly indeed. He once again used his dragon variation, the real surprise in this match, and Anand seemed completely confused with this variation and lost very quickly indeed. You can find that clip elsewhere in this playlist. So after 13 games, Kasparov was 2 up, 7 games still to play in this 20-game match. So Kasparov had the white pieces in game 14, and another opening surprise, this time from Anand. He played the Scandinavian. Now this opening is not seen very often at the top levels, and in fact Kasparov had never played against this in a serious game, and this proved to be a very good choice by Anand. Kasparov had faced this once against David Letterman. They had a game in Letterman's talk show, which continued Queen e6 check and so on. Anyway, on this day, Anand played Queen a5, the standard move. Those of you that know my DVDs will know that in this position I recommend that white should either play bishop here or bishop d2. I like this idea of playing an early bishop d2. I think that presents black with quite a few difficulties, but Kasparov, not so experienced with this variation, played, well, what's generally considered to be the main line. He just brought his knight out in a very standard way. And Anand played c6, normal, to give the queen a route back. And, well, bishop c4, you could say, is one of the main lines here. And then black will usually play the bishop out to f5. But Kasparov chose to play knight e5. Now, on the surface of it, not a bad move, because it prevents the bishop going to g4. But also, if the bishop comes to f5, then white will be able to chase this away with g4, and that can be very annoying. So, for the time being, this is a bit irritating. You see, black, of course, wants to play e6 here to develop his king's bishop, but that will block in the bishop on c8. So, it seemingly seems to present black with a few problems, but Anand played excellently here. Bishop here. Now this looks very odd at first glance because it blocks the e-pawn. In fact, it's an excellent move, because now that bishop can't be hassled by a knight coming to g5, and black is going to develop his king's bishop to g7. Let's see how things developed. Knight e7. I think this shows that playing the knight for a second time in the opening is basically not very good. I mean, I think if white exchanges off, then I don't think black has any difficulties at all. The bishop comes out, and then e6, fine position for black. It's a bit like a Caro-Kann structure, but black has no real difficulties with his pieces. So after a little bit of thought, well, what did Kasparov do about this hanging knight on e5? Well, he played f4. Now that is a very aggressive move indeed, but there are real problems when you play f4. Positionally, it can weaken squares here, but also this diagonal too. Kasparov said after the game that he was in two minds in this game, whether he should be playing for a win or playing for a draw, and this kind of explains some of his opening moves. This looks like he's playing for a win, but maybe he should have compromised here and just exchanged off. It's not a very good move. Excellent move from Anand, developing his king's bishop, and also locking down this f5 square. Now another excellent move from Anand. Basically, once the bishop sits here, white is never going to be able to advance this pawn, and that means the f-file is blocked and this bishop is blocked in. And if white were to take here, then this gives black some control over e4. Again, this f-pawn is blocked. Black is doing very well here. positionally a good decision. So Kasparov played his bishop out, attacking the pawn on f7, but then e6, no problem at all. Basically, black stands well here. By the way, that bishop can't be trapped because black exchanges and then takes a pawn. So Kasparov already is stymied here. I think black has simply a good position. Excellent move from Anand, controlling the g4 square because g4 was turning into a threat. And good move from Anand, putting pressure down the d file. One of the problems that white has in Scandinavian, when you play knight c3 to drive the queen from d5, is that it's not so easy to defend this pawn. Normally you'd want to defend it with c3, but of course the knight is blocking that pawn. So Anand doing very well here. And here it would have been interesting to see what happens after c5. Trying to open this diagonal and looking here, and I think Anand would certainly have the initiative in that position. Instead, Anand played, well, another good move, not quite as direct as c5, but knight d5 certainly gives black some positional advantage. Kasparov took on d5 and now made a very cheeky draw offer. There is no doubt that black stands better in this position, but he's putting the question to Anand and trying to gauge whether Anand really was playing for a win today. Well, after a few minutes, Anand declined the draw, so now everyone's intentions are clear. Kasparov has to fight for his life, and Anand is playing for a win. Okay, why is black better here? It's all to do with the pawn structure. That square is weak. If Anand can land a knight on e4, then he's doing very well indeed, and that knight can always be driven away by the pawn coming to f6. That's why black stands better. From this moment on, with it clear in his mind what he has to do, then Kasparov fought absolutely brilliantly. Okay, watch how he deals with black's positional threats. Bishop here, excellent idea, so that if the knight comes here, then white will be able to exchange off that knight. For example, okay, black gets out of the pin, you exchange off, and here I don't think white has any difficulties actually. So Anand has to find another route for that knight into e4. And somehow Kasparov has to find ways to shake black's positional grip here. Another good move from Kasparov, he's preparing to play c4 to try and chip away at black's centre. So the knight is driven away, this is all good stuff, and Anand is taking control over that square here with the rook move. Okay, and now Kasparov is fighting. So he's preparing a counter-attack on the queen side and in the centre. So Anand still doesn't have time to play the knight in because this is threatened, so the queen has to move away. And Kasparov still trying to counterattack, so that if knight here, then he's going to undermine the c6 square, and for example after this play knight here and attacking these pawns. So just for a moment Anand has to take time again from his plan to cover this square with the bishop, preventing the knight coming in. Kasparov keeps counterattacking, so this bishop, which wasn't doing very much, finds an interesting diagonal here, looking at that slightly sensitive pawn and setting up some kind of pin here. We'll see what happens in a second. So finally it looks like Anand is about to get his knight to e4, but watch how vigorously Kasparov counterattacks. First of all, this move. This is a confusionary tactic. It's a diversion. Probably Anand should take that pawn and sink the knight into c5. Maybe Anand felt he didn't have quite enough advantage here. I mean, this would be a safe way for black to play. Instead, Anand kept pawns on the board, controlling the c5 square, preventing the knight coming in. But this is a risky move because white's pawn remains on a6. As we'll see, this could be a trump card for white, but it's the most ambitious move. So Kasparov's plans are still thwarted, but he's creating trouble. And now another move that just kind of muddies the waters. Kasparov is throwing everything at Anand. If this is taken, let's have a look. Kasparov had analysed this variation. So the knight is threatened, the knight hops in here, white takes the rook, so now black has two minor pieces for a rook, and now white has to keep confusing the issue, and Kasparov said he'd analysed this variation. Now it's a very long and deep variation. I imagine Anand had looked at this too. This check, I mean this is almost a forced variation actually, and in this position it should be a draw. This is a long and forced variation. Kasparov thought this was a draw. His calculation was astonishingly accurate here for such a long variation. And now probably black should just take the draw by perpetual check. Because with Queen f3, if black exchanges, although black is a piece up, white already has 2 pawns and is threatening this one. This is not pleasant for black. So, Anand declined to take the knight, I think correctly, and moved his queen. So, although this knight looks threatening, in fact nothing is happening at the moment. If this knight retreats or moves to c6, for example, here, black is fine. And again, Anand will start to gain control with knight e4. But Kasparov played with such energy here. I mean, this was a really impressive play. So now he's opening up the G file. These pawns are slightly weak, so you never know. He might be able to counterattack here. Anand defended the pawn on f6. Both players were now running very short of time here. They were down to sort of 5 or 6 minutes for the rest of their moves. Not easy in such a complicated position. Now you can see how this pawn could be very dangerous when white is threatening here. Oops, I beg your pardon. Finally, Anand gets his knight into e4, but black has so much counterplay here. Now, why didn't Kasparov take this pawn? Anand would play b5 and actually manage to scoop that pawn back, and black would be doing okay there. So Kasparov, well, manoeuvred very nicely. So the knight hits the bishop here. And now Anand played a very tempting move, hitting the rook, but that rook comes to the g file. Now there's serious counterplay here. I remember I was commentating this game live at the time during the match in New York, just a few yards actually from where the players were playing. And I was with my co-commentator Maurice Ashley, and we were joking, oh, well, maybe Anand's going to play here, and hey, look at this variation. And we put this on the demonstration board, knight f2 mate, and we couldn't believe it when Anand actually played g5. The crowd started whooping, and it actually disturbed the players. But of course, Kasparov didn't go for this. Instead, he played his bishop here, a very sensible move indeed, just liquidating black's active pieces. And remarkably, keeping some kind of control on the g file. Is still problems if black wants to take this pawn, because that knight is still threatening. But you can see that in the endgame, this rook is very, very dangerous. So when the players were short of time, good strategy. But Anand was still fighting, and this is still very double-edged. The rook hits the knight. The bishop drops back to defend. The knight comes to b5, hitting the rook and defending the pawn. The rook had to move, but this is very dangerous. Rook e4, good move from Anand, excellent move. Hitting here and here, but Kasparov had a response to that one, f5. Giving some kind of control here, and of course if Anand were to take that pawn, then white takes the pawn on a7, good for white. So Anand exchanged off that rook. But what a transformation that has taken place. Kasparov's pieces are so active, and it seems as though it's black that's fighting for a draw here. And here, on the last move of the time control, Anand made a terrible blunder. He should have played rook here. And if rook takes pawn, then the rook is able to defend that knight and black would be okay here. Probably the game should end in a draw, but instead Anand, very short of time, slammed out rook here. Both players had made the time control at move 40, but when the smoke cleared, it was clear that black had a lost position, and Anand resigned the game. Let's see why. The rook threatens the knight. If the knight retreats, the rook checks. White is just a clear pawn up here with a dominating position. The rook on the 7th. The pawn is coming down. White's piece is also very good. He's going to play h4 to bring this bishop into the game. White has a winning position. So Kasparov went 3 games up. This was a shocking defeat for Anand. Again, 2 games in a row he'd lost. He'd actually lost 4 out of the last 5 games, I think, yeah. I mean, by this stage, he looked absolutely crushed. And really, the fight had been knocked out of him. There were still 6 games to go, but with 3 games down, the match was effectively over. And indeed, Kasparov cruised through to the finish. I think Anand learnt a lot from his first World Championship match. He learnt a lot about preparation. He was completely out-prepared by Kasparov. And also about the psychology of matches. And Anand came back, as we know, and became a very worthy world champion in a few years' time. But Kasparov was always a very, very difficult opponent for Anand.